Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, and today I'm joined by attorney Cesar Gavidia, and we're going to talk about long-term disability insurance denials and claim benefit information for Voya Insurance Company. And Cesar, Voya used to be, kind of still is, Reliastar. Voya was kind of their branding name. Company goes back a really long time. They were also ING, and in 2014 they brought in this brand of Voya. But they're a giant company. I was telling you earlier before we started, $6 billion in revenue, 6,000 employees, over 13 million clients, which is what they call, which is also could be some policyholders. But as you know from handling a lot of cases against Voya over the years, they basically do mostly group long-term disability insurance coverage policies, which are going to be governed by ERISA. And in this video, I want to talk about some tips for people who are dealing with a Voya claim, have been either denied, considering appealing, any aspect of a Voya claim that we're available to help them with. And hopefully, even if they don't need us right now, they'll get some helpful information in this video that will allow them to either get approved, stay on claim, or deal with a denial should they decide to do it on their own. So when a person first calls you with a Voya claim, and there's 50 different long-term disability insurance companies, and I know you have different opinions about all of them, what comes to your mind when they say, I have a Voya disability claim, can you help me?
Well, that is it's sometimes a loaded question about what kind of help they're going to need depending on what stage of the process they're in. We've handled everything from someone coming to us before they even have applied for Voya, they're anticipating applying for disability or having to stop work, and they're looking for assistance, they're looking for some guidance. And then there's people who've come to us because they've gone through that step of the process and they've been denied. And now they're told that they have a certain amount of time to appeal the decision if they don't disagree with it. Or the whole process could be getting just dragged along by them. I mean, they'll say they're still missing these records when your doctor submitted those records maybe, a month or two ago to them. Or, they're saying that they're still missing pieces of information, they're missing a medical review that they're waiting on. So there's many, many different things that they attempt to excuse themselves by and say, look, we can't make a decision yet because, X, Y, and Z weren't met, or we haven't received the following information.
All right, so some general questions about Voya. From their claims review process, what level of detail do you see them going into as compared to many of the other companies that we handle claims for?
Well, with Voya in particular, what I've noticed is that there's many small businesses like medical practices, dental practices that Voya has gone to insure their employees, everything from their medical assistants, dental hygienists, to their dentists and doctors that are working in those practices. And one real critical component is the language in these disability insurance policies with Voya and how they defined total disability and how they define one's occupation. So it's really important. They're going to get into the details sometimes because, for example, in some of these dental practices that are insured with Voya, they have true own occupation disability coverage, meaning if that dentist becomes disabled or that doctor becomes disabled, what's being analyzed and being reviewed are the substantial material duties of their specific occupation, of dentistry, of orthopedic medicine, or whatever it is that they're doing.
And is that for a limited benefit period, or does that go on to age 65?
It really depends on the type of coverage that your employer chose to purchase, but I can tell you for a fact that Voya does offer own occupation coverage all the way through the life of the policy. In other words, it could be up to age 65 or 67, depending on when the person was born.
Okay. For a person that has a Voya disability claim, whether they're applying or they've been denied, this question is going to apply the same. What's going to be the most important information that they're going to need in order to get their claim approved?
Well, what's critical is their medical records, and that's the foundation of the whole claim, is the support within those records and the evidence within those records that substantiate and back up the limitations they're claiming, the restrictions their doctors are placing on them. If there's a lack in that foundation, if there's holes and gaps in the medical treatment, they're going to have a really tough time. Voya typically will hire or go in-house for their medical reviews, and there's physicians that are reviewing these records or that are contracted to review these records, and if they see that there's really lack in evidence or there is gap in treatment, you haven't seen the doctor in 4 or 5 months, and you're complaining of all these, perhaps increase in symptoms or worsening in symptoms, then they're going to say there's no foundation for what you're claiming, and they're going to deny your claim.
What tip would you offer to a Voya long-term disability claimant to make sure their medical records are as strong as possible?
Well, they have to be their own best advocate in that regard. In other words, they have to be on top of their medical treatment, scheduling frequent visits with their doctors, and sometimes they're not recalling or maybe even expressing their symptoms properly or accurately when they're going to their doctor. They may be forgetting about what they were experiencing 2 months ago, where they're now going into the doctor 2 months later. So it's really important. Sometimes keep a log, keep some sort of journal documenting and writing down all of the symptoms, the intensity of them, when you're experiencing them, for how long. Because then that's going to help you when you go see your doctor to accurately at least have them document what's going on. Because Voya's not necessarily going to really put a lot of weight into that log you're keeping, but if that log is being incorporated into your records, or at least what you're describing there to your doctor is going into those records, that's what they're going to put the weight in, and that's going to help you in terms of getting your claim approved.
How critical, doctors are somewhat notorious for not taking good medical notes, meaning putting things into the records. How important is it in a Voya disability claim to have everything that the claimant's telling them in the medical records?
Oh, it's absolutely important. I mean, if there's a lack in that, and they're not, those medical records are lacking in terms of the symptoms that they're experiencing, then Voya's going to simply say that there's a lack in the evidence to support that you're disabled, that you can't function and perform those occupational duties you're saying you're having extreme difficulty doing.
So another thing in medical records, someone's doing an appeal or applying. A lot of times Voya will deny a claim and say you just don't have enough medical evidence. There may have been some kind of other objective type testing out there that the doctor just didn't recommend because the doctor already kind of knew, I don't need that test. But would you recommend that the person undergo a particular objective test if one is available in order to support their claim?
I think, and that's a real important issue sometimes, is that should you undergo not only, some of these procedures are invasive. For example, in EMG nerve conduction studies, you're having needles put into your arms, and they're sending electric impulses to see if there's nerve damage, nerve injury. It's not a pleasant type of test to really have to sit through. And some of these tests are very expensive. So you really have to justify and see if you need it. But in many cases, it's going to be what could potentially put your claim over that threshold that you need to meet to get approved. All right, that objective piece of evidence that may be lacking through your doctor's visits, and where your doctor's just simply, performing an examination of you, and they're just describing your symptoms in the records. Well, now you have a specific test that's showing the degree of your symptoms, the intensity of those symptoms, how bad the condition is, or how bad the injury is.
Another point I wanted to bring up, Cesar, if a doctor recommends a test and you don't do it, the disability company is going to have a problem with that. If the doctor recommends a particular medication and you haven't tried it, they're going to have a problem with that. If the doctor recommends a physical therapy, an injection procedure, some kind of pain management things, and you as a claimant don't do it, you can bet that Voya is going to say, look, we don't think you took maybe all of the appropriate care, you didn't get all the treatment you needed, or there's more you could do to get yourself better, therefore we don't necessarily think you're reaching the level of being disabled.
Yeah, Voya's going to hold you up to this reasonable, really heightened patient standard. They're going to expect that if your symptoms are as bad as they are, then you're going to be seeing your doctor very frequently. You're going to be following absolutely everything to the letter of the law, everything your doctor's recommending in terms of treatment, medications, follow-up therapies, and even in some cases, surgeries. If you're going and your doctor says, well, look, I think that you're a good candidate for surgery, I'm going to refer you to somebody, and you don't follow up with that referral, that's going to be that's going to be a problem potentially. Or if you do follow up with that referral, and there's a question of why you're not perhaps pursuing that surgery. That's a very common strategy on the part of Voya, where they'll say, well, you didn't undergo that surgery, so maybe your condition, it really isn't that bad. It's not that serious. So we don't see that there's support for your disability claim here.
Right.
And it's important for people to know that in many cases they don't have to pursue that surgery. They don't
Right.
have to pursue that invasive procedure. If there's alternatives and more conservative treatments or more conservative approaches, they can be just fine going through that process instead of having to go through a surgery.
And then the last issue I want to talk about, because there's so many more issues and we have so many videos on our website that people can search different topics, obviously, but the importance of Voya understanding a claimant's occupation. And how does a claimant go about conveying that to Voya? Because a lot of these companies, Cesar, as you know, they just look at the job as a classification. They say it's sedentary, meaning if you can sit, you can work, or it's light duty, or it's medium duty, or it's heavy duty. But how important is it for the claimant to convey what the duties actually were of their job?
It's very, very important that they do that. They're basically their own best witness when it comes to their description of their occupational duties. Voya also has a tendency to go to the employer and say, give me a job description for this person. What is it that this person does every day? What are their critical, important duties that they're performing? What are these functional things that they do that it's so important to their job? And Voya will tend to go to this kind of national economy standard or this physical demand level standard, and people have to be very careful of that. So it's what they should be doing, though, is conveying to Voya the duties accurately, and how important they are and critical they are to performing effectively their occupation.
Does Voya have a national economy definition of disability?
In some cases they would. But in some of the policies that I've seen that have been this own occupation standard of disability, for example, for like a dentist, they're going to be looking at the important duties of what a general dentist does, what a dentist does in general dentistry. So, you look at whether it's a national economy standard or a local economy standard, a dentist is doing more or less the same thing across the globe.
Also, do you see in these Voya disability policies a change of definition after 12 or 24 months?
You can. Yeah, you certainly can see it. And what's important for someone to know leading up to that is that, basically on a certain date, your definition of disability is going to be completely changed. It's going to go to what's commonly referred to as a Social Security standard of disability, or any occupation standard of disability, where you have to be unable due to your sickness or injury to be able to perform any gainful occupation that you're qualified by your education, training, and experience. So if there's not support in the medical records for that, that's a very common time when people are terminated or their benefits are denied.
So when do you start preparing for that change in definition?
You have to anticipate that. You have to anticipate that anywhere from 6 to 12 months out. So if you're not into your doctor and they're not documenting your symptoms and perhaps either a leveling off of your condition or a worsening of your condition, and there's not support there on their part to say, yeah, I don't think that they could function at any gainful occupation or a sedentary occupation, then Voya is going to take that opportunity to deny their claim.
Well, I want to thank you for all the tips that we discussed here today and some experiences we've had with Voya. I want to encourage you that if you have a Voya long-term disability insurance claim, to reach out to Cesar, myself, or any of our disability insurance lawyers. We will immediately provide you with a free initial consultation. So if you're applying, we'll need a copy of your policy. If you've been denied, we'll ask you to send us a copy of your denial letter. We encourage you to search throughout our website, as we have over 600 videos with helpful topics, lots of articles, reviews about Voya, resolved cases, and summaries about other people who have been associated with Voya as well. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the button below, because we're always putting out probably 3 or 4 videos a week, and we're trying to educate long-term disability insurance claimants about this process so that you can always be in the best position possible to get your benefits approved and keep your benefits from being denied. So should you need us in the future, we're available to represent claimants all over the country, and we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.